listening to the Deadly Uncle Podcast,
a safe space for Deadly Uncle conversations.
Well, here we are with another episode of Season 2 here at the Deadly Uncle Podcast. It's my great honor and pleasure. Somebody I look up to as one of the deadliest uncles in Alberta. We have Stirling John on as a guest, and this is a wonderful person that does many things in the community, positive things, for not only the youth but just all ages, all community members. And so, Stirling, can you just tell us where you're from and where you're originally from?
Yeah, I'm originally from Ontario, Treaty 3 territory actually, and I've been out here in Alberta now for the last 17 years. It's crazy, time flies, eh? I just can't believe it's been 17 years since Ontario, but Alberta's a great place. I love it here.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do for a living, not only as, I don't want to spill the beans here, but you're an RCMP officer, but the other things you do as well in the community.
Yeah, so I was transferred to a place called Lethbridge, a great spot, and worked a lot with the blood tribe side of things. So that was my first post. I went up to Little Red River Cree Nation and then down by Edmonton. So been a police officer now for 17 years on February 19th. So wow, it's unbelievable. Wow. I looked like I was in grade 7 when I joined. And the funny thing is my picture is still the same on my ID card, but no, it's been a great career, and I look forward to the retirement end of things because it's also been a very long career too. I wear a ton of hats. Policing's one of those. It's been a great job to really work with communities, but my passion is music, and it's been a really awesome. To look back on Facebook and see where the journey started really professionally with music. To where it is now, and every day it's growing for me. Like I'm always trying to reassess what is my future in music. Where exactly am I meant to be? So yeah, it's amazing.
That is so amazing that you do all those things, and like, when did music become a part of your life?
Well, ever since I was a kid, I've always been, my family was a musical family. We performed in festivals in Ontario, and we were really into the gospel music scene. Now, it's funny, when I was 14, 15 years old, I really wanted to grow with music. I wanted to go on Canadian Idol back in the day, and when I was young enough to do that. But the thing was, and I said it before, I was too afraid to go on Canadian Idol because I was too afraid what people would think of me, maybe lacking confidence at the time of my life. And now I look back and I'm like, that was a time where I lacked certain life experiences that I have now. And the thing is, I have 2 kids, and my kids are both musical. My daughter especially, she's recording now music, and I see the struggles that our youth have to go through, whether it's peer pressure and what their peers think of them. And it's my job as my kid's dad to just reinforce, hey, you have the talents, you have the passion, do what you want to do with music, focus on that, but don't care about what the people that are jealous of you are saying, because all of kids deal with that. And that was what I was afraid of when I was younger. And I never pursued music until later in my life. When I was up north in Little Red River Cree Nation, I would fly into Fox Lake, and I would take my guitar with me and, just start playing out in Fox Lake. And it was kind of the medicine for me necessary to get through the next couple of years of my life, because I went through a really tough time between 2013 and 2016. Not only with professional traumas that I dealt with on the job, dealing with our communities, but with my own personal life as a father, as a married man, and going through divorce, navigation of divorce, combining that with, dealing with traumas from work. it was a lot to deal with. And I found myself really going back to music, to writing to my experiences about failed relationships, about traumas that really helped me work through my issues. And it was a really important time for me in my life to rely on music to get through that time. And I had a memory pop up on my Facebook feed from MCC Studios in Calgary, my very first recording with Johnny Gasparic. And it's amazing to see the amount of songs that have been written and released since that day. I think we're up to 23 songs now that we put out to streaming. But it was a journey for me in my life to really get back into songwriting, to learn from people in the music industry that they brought me so far, and I had to let certain people go because they weren't serving me well. And that's something I've learned about the music industry is you have to learn from people, but if some people aren't meant to be there for you long term in your music career, you have to step out and go alone for a while. And it sucks to be in that position, but we have to do that as musicians if we want to really grow long term, because sometimes people can only take us so far, and it's more of a detriment to your music career long term if you still hang out or work with some of those people. So that's what I had to do. And I met really important key players along the way with joining a band called Hometown Stereo, and then still working with Dave Peterson and finding the right band players through the years to be in my music band, not only musically, but to align with who I am as a person and what I want to represent. So some of it is luck, right? And I was at church this morning, and I'm going through a time in my life where I'm still growing, right? I'm still trying to find new answers for my life, right? I don't think that I'm there, or I'm famous, or I'm important, or anything like that. That's not what it's about. I think that we need to stay true to who we are, because the music industry is it can be a short life too, right? And for me, music, I've recorded the music about like Cut One Loose, Time and On, Record Time, all that stuff, but truly that's not where my heart was, right? And those songs actually connect more with some other people than they may with some of the spiritual music that I'm putting out. But for me as a person, I always want to stay true to who I am as an artist. And if it only takes me so far, then that's okay, because that's my journey. And that's where I am with music. I'm just trying to really figure out what is the long-term plan for my music career. And I think that's what we have to do as artists, to always be reassessing where's the music, where's the market at, what are we called to do. So yeah, it's an interesting journey, and I was planning to retire from the Mounties in 3 years. I'm not going to. I'm going to wait till I have 25 years service, so I have another 7.5 years to go. But I don't plan on being in longer than that. But yeah, it's an interesting journey, juggling frontline policing with the helicopter call-outs, and dealing with some of the people on the job too. Like just last week, you're driving back to the office and you come across a stolen vehicle. It turns into a pursuit, and you're blowing the tires out of the stolen vehicle, and it turns into numerous charges for serious offenders, right? So, and then you go home and write a song.
Write a song about the event, or just write a song?
Trent, I think that song is called "I'm Not Slowing Down."
Oh, there you go. There you go. What I wanted to say about everything that you just said, you were talking about the lessons you've learned through music, but everything you said there can be applied to life in general. Even coming down to like selecting the players. Like, we all have to select the people in our lives that help us get to the place where we want to be. We can't always be around the same people, because like when I quit drinking 5 years ago, I couldn't still hang around with the same people all the time, and it was hard. You have to leave people behind because now your values no longer align. And one piece of advice that I got from my dad, I played in a band with my dad for over 20 years, and I can apply this. He gave me this advice about music, but I apply it to everything in my life. He said, you don't change the band, you change bands. So if you go into a situation and you don't feel like it fits, it's not your job to change what they're doing. It's your job to find the place where you're supposed to be, right? Like, because they were doing fine before you got in there. Like, I've joined bands before, and there's been, people have their own internal conflicts or whatever, and it's not your job to get involved in those things because it's not your place. You need to find where your place is. That's what I took out of the advice anyways. And I kind of apply that to everything that I do in life.
Yeah, no, I definitely fully 100% agree that it's always important to evolve as an artist. It's always important to evolve as a songwriter, and really record the things that are happening around us as artists. And it's always a learning journey. These different communities that we're allowed to go to. I'm lucky enough to travel quite a bit myself to communities, and I go there and I learn more than I'm supposed to teach, more than I'm supposed to share with music. And that's something that I find that's so rewarding about music, is the lessons that you learn along the way from the people you don't expect to learn them from.
No, it's so true. Yeah.
Now, Stirling, being an RCMP officer, I mean, without question, is probably a very stressful job to do. I mean, you're entering people, you're encountering, not all the time, but a lot of times you're encountering people at maybe some of the toughest times in their lives. Are there any tools that you use to deal with that stress on a daily? Because it is a hard job, and I mean, big up to you for being able to do it, because people need help, and you're one of the people that responds when they need help. But what do you do to help yourself when that happens?
There's times where you get off work at 6 a.m. in the morning and you're just exhausted, not just physically, but mentally. And, but you still, before you go to bed, I still sometimes drag myself down to my studio, plug in the mic and the guitar, and just put my headphones on and just listen to some of the music that I've been recording and writing to. And I find it healing for myself, even to play 5 minutes before I go to bed. It really helps get your mind out of the workplace. And something I find is it is a heavy career. And I think that especially over the last 5 years, policing has been an extremely tough career because there's been a lot of misinformation that's put out there. And I think now we're coming to a point in time where the pendulum's starting to swing. Because, and I'll just say it, I'm a full disclosure kind of guy. Being a police officer in the music scene is not a popular thing. It's not.
Yeah.
Because quite honestly, I wear the history of Canada, right? And I acknowledge that. I get that. As a Native person, I get that. But there has to come a point in time where we have to acknowledge where we're at, and we have to allow growth to happen on both ends of the spectrum, right? Because there is a lot of good police officers out there that want to make positive change in our communities, and we have to allow that. I hear it all the time, the negative, on the job. And in fact, I hear it a lot. Your music sucks, Stirling. but you have to.
How dare they?
You have to take the moment and see what is going on. Well, you had to arrest somebody, and they're mad at you, right?
Yeah.
I don't hold those things against people, because I have also had it where people have come back and said, I really apologize for saying that to you because I was just at a bad place in my life, right? And I get that we all have a different journey, right? You talked about 5 years ago, you have to make changes as to who you hang out with, right? People are growing, people are healing, and there's times as well where, I've seen people that are broken when they've lost absolutely everything, and you're like, okay, this isn't a plug to show you a song, but you go to sudden deaths, you go to people who have lost absolutely everything through divorce or gambling or addictions or what have you, a lost loved one. And you hear some of the words that they say, and it's like, I've lost the only reason I rise in the morning, right? And then I'm like, oh my goodness, Dave Peterson wrote to that in Try Again. And I've absolutely showed them some of these songs that are applicable to their current situation. and to see them break down is a start of perhaps their healing journey, right? And that's happened so many times, or you get called to after a sudden death to go play at someone's house at their wake in Enoch, and they just want you to perform some of those songs for healing for their family. I absolutely do that, and it's an honor to do that, right? So I think that what you say, Curt, is you go and you teach, but you learn as well, and sometimes you learn more than you come to teach. It's the same thing about the community. I come and I'll do these things within the community, but they teach me so much too. And that's the cool thing about my position as a police officer is, number one, you never go in thinking that you're better than anybody else, right? You have to be humble. We have to be humble who we are. We're here to help. We're here to help each other get through the day. We're here to serve communities, and sometimes, yes, it involves having to arrest somebody when they've committed an offense or when they can't protect or help themselves. But I'll tell you, it's such an interesting place to be as an Indigenous police officer, but also to share music in these communities. So we could talk for days about this stuff, but
yeah. It's we need a full day for you for sure. And like that kind of brings me to my next question for you. What's been one of the most, I guess, positive encounters that you've had, being an RCMP? What is something that sticks out to you that's inspired you or that's inspiring about, doing the job you do?
Well, I got to tell you something. I'm not ashamed of it. I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress back in 2016. And one of my biggest issues is my memory. My memory is terrible. And music actually helps me re-trigger certain things. But, sometimes we'll be chatting around the office with the guys over coffee, and they were like, hey, remember, Stirling, that time that you went to that gun call and the guy pulled a gun on you and all that sort of thing? And I'm like, I don't remember that. Right?
Wow.
And they were like, that's crazy, because that's a pretty substantial thing that's happened in your life, and you start to think about all the different calls you've been on over 17 years, and you're like, yeah, that's pretty crazy, going back to your question, Curt, is memorable times. There's always memorable times in this job. I can go back just a couple of days ago, my last night shift. I was driving along Highway 16, and there was an individual who had stopped on the side of the road, and I went up, stopped, and checked. Right, whether it's you stop and check on vehicles because sometimes you're out there helping them change their tire. That's what we do, right? Because sometimes that is what you need to do to see the good you've done at the end of your shift, because other times it's hard to see that, right? But you run across people who have just found out that they've lost a loved one, and they're just in utter tears on the side of the road, just trying to regroup and figure out what the next steps are. And it's as simple as that, taking the time to go up to that driver's side door and just spend that time with them and talk to them and reassure them and give them whatever you can do, whatever messages of hope you can do to get them through that day. And these things happen all the time, right? So it's a career where you just never know. For some reason, for me, it's always burning houses that I end up coming across or going into. And it's weird because I'm not a firefighter, I'm a police officer, right?
Yeah.
But it was like Calgary, the Calgary Awards, September of 2022. I was supposed to sing at the Metropolitan that night, and I was working night shift. It was near 2 a.m. in the morning. I'm driving back into Spruce Grove, and I get to Pioneer Road, and I smell smoke. And anyways, I ended up following my scent to the trail of scent to this house fully engulfed on fire. And there was vehicles in the driveway, and I could see, I had to grab a rock and toss it through the window to open the door from the other side. And I opened the door up, and there was shoes in that house, lots of them. And the first thing that came to my mind was, there's kids in here. And you don't think twice, you go in. And especially when that door opens up, you have minutes because the oxygen is now feeding the house, right?
Yeah.
And the first thing that you do is you take off your police officer hat, you put your dad hat on, and you go in. And I remember crawling into that house and going up the stairs, and the smoke was just getting heavier and heavier. And it was such a scary thing, but you go in anyways. And what struck me about that file was there was another police officer that showed up shortly after, and she came in right after me to go into this house. What's amazing about this career is we don't hear about these things, we don't advertise it, the other police officers don't advertise it, but they all are there to go in and risk their lives. And that's what I think makes such a close-knit community and family about first responding, whether it's firefighters or EMS or police or what have you, is these are people who are parents. They are people who are going to go get off work, go to sleep, and wake up and be a mom or a dad. And yet they're there in that moment of time to go into the unknown with you. And that's why I have so much respect for the people I work with, is you just never know, right? So that day I ended up with smoke inhalation. I ended up at the Stony Plain Hospital. They gave me a bunch of puffers to be able to sing in Calgary that night.
Oh,
I was a little bit hoarse that night, but I did. But yeah, so I'm always alert when it comes to fires, because I just it's happened a lot of times, and you're always working when people are asleep and they don't necessarily, there wasn't anybody in the house, thankfully.
Oh wow, that's great.
Yeah, but it was a scary thing. And so there's lots of opportunities, lots of stories out there where you can name it. And yeah.
Do we need more Indigenous people in the service, Stirling?
100%. Yeah. There's so many opportunities now too, and I'm always promoting this. And I have many friends who are up quite high in the RCMP, and we're at a point in time in our life where it's never been a better time to get in, and those opportunities are available. But I think that in the next 10 years, we certainly are going to need a lot more. But no, absolutely. If it's a passion for anybody, go for it, regardless of your age too. I mean, if you're like 40, 50 years old, and if it's been something that's been something you wanted to do, then do it. When I was in depot, there was a fisherman from Newfoundland who was 56 years of age, and it's something he wanted to do all his life, and he did it. I mean, he only probably served, I don't know, maybe eight or 9 years in the RCMP, but he followed his passions and that. And I think that it's an important thing when it comes to reconciliation too, right? That conversation.
Yeah. Well, that kind of leads me to my question. I mean, we all know that there is a long history of, issues with the RCMP and Canadian, like with Indigenous people too. So my question is, it's not to dwell on any of the negative stuff that people talk about or anything. I just want to know, as an Indigenous man, a young Indigenous man, what made you make those moves to go and join the RCMP, and what drove you to do that? Like, obviously, you're doing great work and everything, but there had to be something in your life that sparked that initial desire to want to go out there and be able to help people in that way. And can you help us understand that?
So when I was younger, I didn't think the same way that I do now. My main reason for going into policing was to drive fast and to go respond to calls and be a hero. I mean, that's quite honestly what it was. I just wanted to get into it because it was exciting. And honestly, I didn't know what the RCMP was up until my teenage years, because in Ontario we had the OPP and all the provincial services of jurisdiction there. Quite honestly, the RCMP took me first. They gave me the chance, right? Otherwise, I would have ended up in a city force or Ontario Provincial Police or a Schnabel Police Service in Ontario. But the main reason why I ended up going into policing in general is because when I was 5 or 6 years old, I seen a police pursuit go past my house, and they were driving fast, and I always wanted to know what happened after the police pursuit. how did it end? And then I ended up starting to learn voice impressions. When I was younger, we had a siren that went off in our town every Saturday at noon, 7 times. And it was like an air raid siren. And I started practicing sirens and then voice impressions. And then through my teenage years, I knew I was going to be a police officer, but I didn't know how I was going to become a police officer, because quite honestly, I felt like I would never get in. I've never been a big exam writer. I've never liked writing exams. In fact, my focus is terrible when it comes to writing exams. I'm sure it's probably ADHD or something. But I think I lucked out, to be honest, in writing the exam, because I was able to focus enough to get through it, and so I remember, though, when I was in my teenage years, there was a guy that said, Stirling, the average hiring age of a police officer is 27 years of age. And I'm like, well, that sucks, because I don't want to wait till I'm 27. I want to be able to do it now. And I realized that person was very negative. He was very negative for saying that, because he shouldn't say that. He should say, you know what? You need to do your best. You need to apply yourself, and I know you'll get in. That would be the right thing to say. You're not going to get in until you're 27. And I say this because we need to give the same advice to our youth that are out there that are getting through their teenage years, to promote them and lift them up, to say, you know what? You can be a police officer. You can be a nurse. You can be whatever you want to do. But we need to give them the proper support. And that's honestly the reason why I put out the song, I'll Never Give Up. And it's like, I'm stuck in parallel lines. I stay there most of the time. They tell me fit in and give up. That's life, because you're never going to get there. You're never going to reach those dreams. And then the chorus goes into, I'm running right through never, going to give them hopeless a piece of my mind. And that's the reason why I put that song out. Now the thing is, when I applied, I went into the Newmarket RCMP, and I just put applications out everywhere. I was 18 years of age, and I was like, well, I'm going to try at least. I'm going to put my name out there. The worst that they could say is no. I went in for a 3-hour interview. I didn't know what to think, if I was going to get accepted, because you had to get through the one interview to get into the next. And that recruiter, Constable Williams, gave me the chance. And I'm surprised he did. I was young. It was very rare for an 18, 19-year-old to get into police, right? And I have that same mentality moving ahead now with the way I conversate with recruitment, with the advice I've given to some other recruiters, and say, number one, we have to acknowledge that some people may have a past. We have to acknowledge that some people have changed, right? And that's my way of thinking is, people all have the journey, right? Sometimes people have made bad decisions in their young years, and we have to give people the chance. Just like Constable Williams gave me the chance. And I'm thankful for that. And I went off to depot in 2006 of September. And the whole time through, I always doubted myself. I'm like, am I going to get kicked out? Am I not going to make it through this? All these things. I always had that anxiety and doubt, but I made it through. So I went off to my first post, and I've been given great opportunities in the police force to really pursue some of my dreams with aviation. The same thing, K Division, RCMP Air Services gave me the chance to work on the police helicopter as a tactical flight officer and serve on some high-profile missions across Western Canada. So I've been blessed and fortunate, and the same thing, the RCMP has given me the leeway to do what I've been doing on my own time with music. I initially was afraid that I might not be able to do that, but I have been allowed, and I've been given nothing but support from many people that are high up in the RCMP. So, it's been an interesting journey.
Wow, it's amazing to hear you talk about your journey. I know that you spoke about being in church today. How do you tie your belief system into your everyday life? And then also, did you grow up with any traditional practices? Were you surrounded by any ceremonies or those type of things?
Yeah, for the most part. So I remember my grandma's house. She had a big totem pole in the front. Her house was purple, and she had this big totem pole in her front yard there. Mainly, I was brought up with traditional Baptist Christian faith, which I am. I'm a Christian, and one thing I find is, when I was going through the tough time in my life, I actually started going down a different path, right? And I realized that God was a very central part of my life. Getting back to just navigating divorce and navigating PTSD was a tough time for me, right? And these going back to my faith, it still speaks to me when I go to church, and I realize that God in my heart is to love others as well, right? And that's why we speak to this stuff in the music, right? To show compassion for others to see God in you, right? To be a light. We need to shine bright for our communities, and that's what's important to me, to do that. It's. I know that there's a bigger path over the next few years for me. I just don't know fully what that is. There's been amazing opportunities for me, and some opportunities shut down, right? I look back, Trent, like CFWE and CJWE have been huge supporters for me right from the beginning, actually. They've been the one station in Alberta that has actually supported me, right?
That's awesome.
And I put my music out to other stations locally that have never supported me, right, whatsoever. And I don't. It is what it is. We all know how the music industry can be.
Yep.
Right. And I'm a firm believer in being very straightforward and honest. I've hired trackers before, which have done absolutely nothing for me as an independent artist, right? Which trackers need to do better. Some trackers that are connected into the mainstream radio, they need to do better. And so does some other radio stations. They need to do better in supporting the independent artists, because they don't, quite honestly.
It's true.
So
there's not a lot of radio stations that do support independent artists, and I'm glad to say that I work for Windspeaker Media, and we do that. Like, I just started a program, a weekly thing down here at CJWE called the Southern Alberta Songwriter Showcase. So I'm opening up space to allow people that maybe aren't even recording to come in and share a song and share with the public who they are. So I think you're right. Radio does need to do better, because too many radio stations, especially in mainstream, let's say country music, they have a formula of how many men they play, how many women they play, how many, everything's formulatic. Whatever the word is. I don't want to sound like him, but you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, it's all there, and they don't stray from that, and they don't provide opportunities for people that are out here doing it on their own and doing good work on their own. And I think that's a really good point that you made there.
Yeah, it's been really wonderful to have you on the podcast today. And my last question for you, it's amazing to see all the work that you do, and I can tell that the next generation is really important to you. And I seen that you brought some of our good friends, Mr. Zach Williard, over to the Stampede, and you're working with you're also your daughter and different younger artists. Can you tell us about that and what you were doing there?
Yeah, so I started up the Stirling John Foundation for Youth Empowerment Limited. It's a not-for-profit organization, registered. And what I wanted to do with that is provide the opportunities to a focus with Indigenous youth in areas that don't necessarily have those opportunities available. So I worked up north. I've worked in the isolated locations. And putting all that together, proximity to the cities, but also opportunity with some of our youth that don't know where to start, right? I remember starting into music and being like, okay, what do I need to get for equipment? What do I need to go to record a song? And there's so much learning, and it can be overwhelming for a lot of people to know where to start, right? So over the years, I've taught myself video production, some levels of audio production, but for the professionally recorded songs, we utilize like MCC Studios or Velveteen or some other studios. But we created an opportunity, partnered up with the Calgary Stampede last year to bring 2 youth down to the stage. So Zach Willier and Bryce Delorme from Sucker Creek, and also Buffalo Métis Settlement. And we put them on stage backed by my music band, and they performed for, I believe it was an hour. And then we also put them up in hotels and for them and a family member, and recorded them each their first song at MCC Studios. So that was a big undertaking this past year. I plan to have an announcement here in the next month or so about our next project for Stampede, for the Youth Foundation, but I am looking for to sponsor a youth and a guardian to come to the Country Music Alberta gala and weekend here in Edmonton on March 9th and 10th. It's a good opportunity for them to just at least mingle with the people in the industry, the radio, maybe go to some seminars if they want that, but also attend the gala with the Stirling John Band at our table. So that's what we're going to be doing next month. And we just want to create opportunities and use it as an opportunity to lift other people up. With my daughter, I am working with her. I'm working with her outside of the foundation because the foundation is solely for other youth. I can certainly provide everything I can to my daughter, but I want to make sure that there's transparency there, that, hey, there's no favor happening here. The foundation is for other youth, not for my own family. So, yeah.
Well, I just want to say that I know I'm 49, but I identify as a youth, so does that count?
So do I. I got some gray hairs coming in here, so.
I was going to say, it looks like looking at you on camera, you could probably do acting, modeling. There's many things you could do, my friend. Holy smokes.
Well, you know what? I'm anxiously awaiting the 6th of February because that's when the JUNO nominations come out, and my fingers are crossed. I submitted this past year, and it was a ton of work, so we'll see.
It is daunting, to submit to JUNOs. There's so much work.
Oh, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It was like a week of work, and it was a ton. It's like, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, good luck, my friend, for sure.
Yeah.
You've been doing, you've been hard at this for X number of years now. I've watched you as you started because I was, not only listening to CFWE, but I work there as well. So, you're always putting out good product, and like we said, you're helping the community. So you're definitely, Stirling, you're definitely a deadly uncle.
Yes, yes, you are a deadly uncle. Thank you so much for being on season 2 here, Stirling. It's ever since I met you, that you're somebody that I've looked up to for all that you do, even beyond the career stuff and everything else. You're a wonderful person. Every time I see you with great energy. So thank you for being an awesome uncle.
Thanks a lot, guys. And yeah, I appreciate you bringing me on today and for what you guys do as well. So keep up the good work, and I know we'll be seeing each other soon.
Right.
Keep rocking. Awesome. Thank you so much, Stirling.
You're listening to the Deadly Uncle Podcast,
a safe space for Deadly Uncle conversations.